Next up, we have Melanie Lovering. She comes from a long line of seamstresses and has been designing and involved in the fiber arts since a very young age. She has been a teacher and guidance counselor, and all the while continues to be inspired by the birds, ocean, and forests that create the natural beauty of New Hampshire. Please welcome to the stage Melanie Lovering.
I'm one of the short ones. See if that works. Before I begin, I want to thank my eldest daughter, Kim Willoughby, for all her photography and her graphic artistry that she did for my program. I've had many interests in my life, but the two that have stayed with me is my love of nature and my love of sewing. When you're in nature, you want to make sure you take the time to look at the small details and textures, and I think you can say the same thing for my thread painting. I grew up in Walpole, New Hampshire, where our closest neighbor was a mile away. My father taught me the names of birds and wildflowers. Bluebirds were his favorite, and trailing arbutus has the most heavenly smell in early spring. My mother and my grandmother were accomplished seamstresses. This is my grandmother's treadle sewing machine, which is powered only by the foot pedal. At the age of 9, I was designing my own Barbie doll clothes and making money sewing clothes for the next door neighbor. In 2001, I saw Christine Fries-Url's thread painting called Miranda the Tempest, and I just loved how she thread painted her red hair. So of course, I had to go right home and start my own adventures in thread painting. To do thread painting, you put tulle and dissolvable interfacing in a frame and keep it taut, put it underneath the sewing machine of the needle of a sewing machine, and move around the frame so that you get the stitches, the texture, and that you want. When you're finished, you trim away the excess tulle and dissolve the interfacing, and you're left with a standalone piece that can then be attached to background fabric. I started attaching my thread paintings to wall hangings that I would do. This wall hanging entitled Climb Aboard is based on a childhood memory of mine and my father's favorite saying. The kite, the tree, the dog, and the Jeep were all thread painted separately. This is based on a photograph of my sister Linda's favorite Buff Orpington chicken. I found some material that looked like chicken wire to me, and then I put some details in so it looked like the chicken's going for her morning walk around the yard. Then I did a series of 4 bird wall hangings, and I would do the bluebird and the female cardinal separate and attach it to background fabric. This is a rose-breasted grosbeak and a goldfinch that I did separately, and then on the background material, I sent away my images to an online company that printed out the image on fabric. I want to thank my good friend Margaret Brooks for all her photos that she gives me of the birds that come to visit her bird feeder. You want to look at the stitching for those that look like feathers on the bird, and then I did some echo quilting on the background fabric. This little bluebird has the same effect with looking like feathers. And then I attached it to background fabric, which I highlighted the leaves and the blossoms and the branches. This thread painting was based on a trip to the Marsh-Billing-Rockefeller National Park in Vermont. I use the method that Allison Holt uses, which is doing her thread painting on a piece of silk. This, you want to take a look at the stitching that I did in the background, and then I did the foreground afterwards, sometimes right on top of the original stitching that I did, to give some kind of depth to it, and I want your eye to see the foreground first. These two were photos taken on a hike to Blueberry Mountain in Maine. I'm an avid hiker and peak bagger. In 2001, I completed the 4,000-foot high mountains in New Hampshire, and now I'm working on 52 with a view list. I always take my camera with me and take photos of things that I think will make a good thread painting. I love the moss growing on either side of the waterfall that goes into Rattlesnake Pool. Lady slippers often hide along the hiking trail, and you have to look closely to find them. In this photo, I want you to take a look at the boulder. I left it without any stitching on it because I wanted the leaves and the branches to stand out and give a more three-dimensional look to my picture. This photo was taken out at Star Island, one of my favorite places. It was a group project for the Art Quilt Bee, which is a division of the Cochico Quilt Guild. I'll be teaching thread painting out at Star Island this fall at the 2017 Isle of Shoals Quilt Retreat, and I can't wait to go back to one of my favorite places. When you're hiking, the tendency is to look off to the distance to see where you've come so far, but I want to remind you that when you're out in nature, if you take a close look, you'll be treated to some wonderful details and beautiful textures.